Disney has canceled one of its upcoming live-action remakes after Snow White flopped.
Well, guys, it seems like Disney might be finally learning their lesson. They flopped so hard in Snow White, trying to be brazen and rewrite history and representative of its modern audience, and we all saw how that went.
And generally attacking men and suggesting that Snow White was a story and all this.
Hollywood. In a move nobody saw coming, the studio has reportedly hit the brakes on every single live-action remake in development, confirming speculation that has swirled for months. This isn't just a pause, it's a full-blown corporate retreat from what was once their most reliable cash machine. And make no mistake, this unprecedented decision reportedly stems directly from the absolute implosion of one upcoming film, their Snow White adaptation. The news broke like a thunderclap in the entertainment world, confirming what many insiders had already suspected, that the disastrous reception to the mere idea of the modernized Snow White had become a contagion threatening to stain the entire brand. Studio representatives, speaking on background, have reportedly conceded that the pipeline is grinding to an immediate halt. This single decisive move pulled the plug on every in-development reimagining of their animated classics, leaving industry observers stunned and longtime fans sharply divided over what this means for the future of Disney storytelling. Look, for over a decade, Disney's live-action remakes were a money-printing machine. Films like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King minted billions globally, even if critics were often less than thrilled. The formula seemed foolproof. Tap into nostalgia, update the visuals with cutting-edge CGI, and rake in the profits. It was a reliable tentpole strategy that seemed invincible. But something about the upcoming Snow White remake felt different from the start. Early buzz hinted that the project was wobbling under the weight of clashing creative visions long before filming even began. Yet few outside the inner circle foresaw the sheer avalanche of backlash that would ultimately force Disney's hand and reportedly lead to this dramatic industry-wide shift. A perfect storm was brewing within this single production, one that would ultimately poison the well for the entire live-action strategy and rewrite Disney's immediate
There's a
future.
big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
At the very center of this brewing storm was its star, Rachel Zegler. What started as casting buzz quickly spiraled into a full-blown PR crisis that arguably became the primary driver of public negativity. In a climate where every interview clip and social media post can be amplified 1,000-fold, Zegler's spirited defense of the remake's updated themes drew immediate fire from traditionalists who felt the studio was erasing the gentle innocence of the 1937 masterpiece. Her public comments about modernizing the classic, how she felt about the original film, and particularly her statements about the story's themes or perceived flaws, struck a nerve with countless fans who cherished the original. Social media platforms lit up with criticism, dissecting her words. Then came the whispers, the explosive rumors that reportedly surfaced about the actress's demeanor behind closed doors, claims she clashed during filming or even during press events. One particularly wild story circulating claimed an incident occurred during a closed-door press junket. The story, regardless of its complete veracity, gained intense traction in an online echo chamber already primed to believe the worst about the film and its star. Hashtags calling for Boyk Zero TDs trended worldwide, completely overshadowing any attempts by Disney or Zegler's team to correct the record or provide context. Her public image became inextricably linked to the film's negative perception, creating a level of pre-release toxicity rarely seen.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable. There's some clip of her on the internet in her Snow White outfit saying, "Every hour I am in the outfit of Snow White wearing the dress. All 18 hours, I deserve to be paid for every single one."
But the problems weren't just external PR nightmares. Behind the scenes, the Snow White production was reportedly a chaotic battleground plagued by fundamental disagreements over the film's direction. Anonymous crew members, reportedly emboldened by internet anonymity, painted a picture of a film being pulled in opposite directions, those who wanted a faithful retelling clashing with those determined to inject what they deemed modern relevance. The script reportedly underwent frantic last-minute rewrites, and reshoots were scheduled at breakneck speed, making the process feel rushed and disjointed. As one frustrated technician reportedly told a colleague, We were stitching together two completely different movies and hoping the seams wouldn't show. Test audiences, however, spotted those seams immediately. Reports from early screenings described jolting tonal shifts, with moments of goofy physical comedy jarringly placed against somber lectures on empowerment, making the final cut feel like a patchwork quilt of clashing priorities and conflicting agendas. Each subsequent leak compounded the damage when rough footage surfaced online, complete with unfinished visual effects and placeholder audio. Viewers criticized what they perceived as cheap green screen backdrops, inconsistent digital creatures, and dialogue that sounded more like social media slogans than actual fairy tale prose, confirming many fans' worst fears about the film's quality and direction.
So yeah, my agent would have. Oh my God.
All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
What?
As the public backlash and production woes mounted, panic began to spread through Disney's executive suites. The once reliable formula was showing signs of catastrophic failure before the movie was even released. Internal reports reportedly started comparing Snow White not to a future classic, but to Cats, a resource-guzzling spectacle destined for meme infamy rather than box office glory. While some executives reportedly argued the controversy might be an anomaly that could flip once a polished cut hit theaters, the prevailing mood shifted dramatically once financial analysts weighed in. Projections showed that if sentiment stayed negative, the film would struggle immensely, potentially failing to break even, especially given the ballooning marketing costs required to try and rehabilitate its image. A single underperforming title could be absorbed by a company the size of Disney, but analysts warned that a pattern of flops across the live-action slate would devastate Disney's long-term licensing agreements and theme park synergism, both built entirely on a pristine brand perception. The stakes were suddenly much, much higher than just one movie's box office fate.
I'm sorry, but I don't really care what happens with this movie. I really hope her career is pretty much over. I'd be thrilled to see that.
The writing was on the wall, and the financial reports painted a grim picture. The tipping point reportedly arrived when a leaked internal report spelled out the chilling scenario. Continuing the live-action slate as planned could precipitate a cascading loss of goodwill among the core Disney families who typically defend the brand at all costs. If that support eroded, merchandise sales tied to future releases would suffer. Attendance at character experiences in parks could dwindle, and streaming subscriptions already plateauing might decline as subscribers sought fresh alternatives. In other words, Snow White wasn't just a problematic film, it was a potential contagion threatening nearly every revenue stream Disney relies upon. Ultimately, Bob Iger, known for cold, pragmatic decisions, made the call. In a new directive that reportedly echoed through every department head, he cited strategic realignment and proactive brand stewardship as the corporate reasons for shelving all live-action reimaginings. That phrase, brand stewardship, reportedly rang loud among insiders who recognized it instantly as corporate shorthand for crisis containment and damage limitation. The signal was clear. The risk of continuing was far greater than the cost of stopping.
Is she not seen as box office poison now because of all of her antics?
The decision hit like a bomb inside and outside the company. Projects already deep in pre-production were instantly frozen. Teams deep into post-production for other titles were reportedly told to stand by for reassignment. Artists who had spent months designing elaborate sets and costumes learned via company-wide memo that their labor now belonged to the vault, their creative efforts locked away indefinitely. On social media, discourse went nuclear. Defenders of the cancellation hailed the retreat as a victory for preserving the timeless magic of Disney's animated canon, arguing it was a necessary correction. Others lamented the loss of potentially inventive takes that they argued could have complemented the originals. But the big question lingered. Why did Snow White collapse so spectacularly? Was it just the star's controversial presence and comments? Was it fundamentally flawed execution with ham-fisted messaging? Or simply an audience utterly fatigued by endless retreads that felt more like corporate cash grabs than creative endeavors? Analysts dissected whether the film's struggles stemmed from attempting to ride multiple horses at once, juggling winking meta-humor with solemn lectures about societal expectations, satisfying neither. Even Greta Gerwig's attachment, initially touted as proof that Disney sought distinctive voices, reportedly became another casualty of the conflicting mandates. Her early treatment reportedly emphasized character depth and whimsy, but as the studio demanded more crowd-pleasing spectacle and modern commentary, the final draft reportedly ballooned into a Frankenstein's monster. Gerwig's silence during the height of the controversy reportedly spoke volumes, with colleagues confiding she was creatively heartbroken.
To vote as a shareholder of Disney, my stock has plateaued over the last 10 years.
Meanwhile, rival studios took frantic notes. Executives at competing companies reportedly began auditing their own remake slates, fearing they might be next to spark an internet maelstrom if they weren't careful. Some reportedly accelerated original scripts into production, eager to fill potential gaps in the release calendar that Disney's withdrawal would create. Merchandising partners also scrambled, uncertain whether planned toy lines and promotional tie-ins would still see daylight if the film's reputation sank further. One licensee, speaking off the record, reportedly lamented that warehouses full of character dolls might never hit shelves. Inside Disney's Burbank lot, morale seesawed between relief and despair. Story artists who had long wanted to pitch fresh original IP sensed an opening, whispering that the end of remake mania could rejuvenate creativity. Production accountants, however, reportedly fretted over the enormous sunk costs now sitting idle on hard drives. Departments devoted exclusively to adaptation pipelines faced reassignment or downsizing. The studio's internal communications reportedly buzzed with rumors about severance packages and redeployments to streaming series, theme park attractions, or the ever-hungry Marvel and Star Wars divisions. What happens to Snow White itself remains a lingering question. The theatrical release date, once circled on every analyst's calendar, now reportedly hangs by a thread. Insiders suggest Disney may opt for a minimal rollout, meeting contractual obligations but sparing itself further embarrassment. Or it could become a streaming exclusive, quietly dropped onto Disney Plus when curiosity cools. Either approach tacitly acknowledges the studio's unwillingness to treat the film as a flagship event.
I'm a narcissist.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
So, what comes next for the Mouse House after this seismic shift? Word inside Disney suggests a significant pivot is underway. Rebuilding trust now reportedly tops Disney's agenda. This isn't just cosmetic. It's a strategic reevaluation of what defines the Disney magic in the 2020s. Reports indicate a push towards original animated features, smaller-scale live-action fantasies unburdened by legacy IP, and a slate of streaming projects that emphasize new characters rather than retooled icons. Focus groups are reportedly being rescheduled to gauge how audiences respond to wholly novel storylines that still carry Disney's signature optimism and heart. It's a move insiders describe as rediscovering the thrill of uncertainty, an ironic admission from a company that spent the last decade carefully eliminating risk through brand familiarity. Without the baggage of 70-year-old storylines, writers and directors can reportedly address modern themes organically rather than grafting them awkwardly onto existing plots. Will Disney ever dip back into the remake well? Corporate history shows nothing is permanent, and a future CEO might decide the time is right to test the waters again, armed with lessons learned from this debacle. But for now, the edict is crystal clear. The live-action revivals are iceboxed indefinitely, their scripts tucked away in digital archives alongside other abandoned experiments. Specific casualties are already evident. A promising Hercules adaptation, reportedly exploring a quirky tone, is reportedly shelved, and a high-budget take on The Sword and the Stone, deep into pre-visualization, now sits idle.
$500 million.
Correct.
$500 million.
Approximately $500 million in total.
If she never opened her mouth and she didn't do all this nonsense, people would have gone and watched the movie.
The Snow White disaster isn't just a failed film, it's a seismic event in corporate entertainment history. A moment when Disney's most reliable formula crumbled under the combined weight of audience backlash, creative conflict, unfortunate PR, and a star's perceived missteps. It's a humbling, expensive lesson that even the most beloved brands have limits, that nostalgia isn't an unlimited resource, and that sometimes, no matter how hard you wish upon a star, not every fairy tale comes true. While cynics may believe the hiatus is a calculated pause rather than a permanent ban, the symbolic resonance remains powerful. A once unstoppable conveyor belt of live-action remakes now sits silent, replaced by a louder question echoing through Burbank halls. What comes next when nostalgia no longer pays the bills? Whether future historians view Disney's pivot as the first step in a creative renaissance or a short-sighted retreat will depend entirely on what follows. But for now, all eyes remain fixed on the aftermath of an unprecedented capitulation, a chapter of corporate lore in which a beloved giant admitted at last that some risks are just too great, and some wells can, in fact, be poisoned beyond repair. The age of automatic nostalgia dividends appears to have ended on the day Disney admitted defeat over Snow White.